Gerhard Mathangani, the coach Michael Short, and the longtime voice of the Alexandria Valley Cubs on the Big 95. We're talking Robert Smith. Had the call another thrilling Valley Cup victory tonight over the Lincoln Golden Bears, 28-21. Robert, welcome in. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, John.
Remind me, how many years have you been doing play-by-play for Alexandria?
Season number 35.
Wow. 35 years.
I learned that the other
I
week.
started when I was 4 years old, John.
Tonight's game, I'm sitting here. We'll talk about this. We're going to see some highlights of the game a little bit later on. Gerhard was out there. But it's 21-7 to begin the fourth quarter, right?
It was.
Alexandria's got this thing, you think, in the bag. And then Jordan Smith, who's your color guy, who's our director, he's sending me a text, 21-14, 21-21. Alexandria, Antonio Ross scored, goes 28-21. Then here comes Lincoln again. It's like it seemed like the last minute took 20 minutes.
It did.
Walk us through the end of that thing when Lincoln kind of tied things up, and then you're having to hold on for your life there at the end of the game.
Well, Alexandria went up 21-7. Lincoln came back, scored 14 unanswered, tied the game up at 21-21 with about 8.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Alexandria went on a long drive. They actually had two really long, sustained drives in the second half that I think was a big part of winning the ball game. One was to begin the second half when they ate up almost half of the third quarter, scored. That was when they went up 21-7. But then Lincoln came back, tied it up 21-21. Alexandria got the ball, drove it 83 yards back down the field. Antonio Ross scored on a 7-yard run with 1 minute and 13 seconds left. That gave Alexandria the lead at 28-21. Lincoln had 2 timeouts. They drove the football back down the field and actually had 2 shots to the end zone from the 5-yard line. Ooh. And the last play, quarterback had a guy open, but overthrew him, threw the ball through the back of the end zone, and that ended the ball game. What a game it was tonight.
Oh, thrilling Alexandria win tonight. Okay, I wasn't there. You called the game. You were at the game. You shot the game. So you guys take it away and tell us about it.
Yeah, we won't narrate this play-by-play because let's just be honest, all the fireworks happened after we left that game, and Robert did a great job talking about that. But one of the things that I noticed, Robert, in the early going of this one, it was really played between the 30-yard lines essentially. A big play by Lincoln late in the second quarter. Some big plays by Alexandria, but it was one of the things to me that I think both coaches did a good job preparing their teams for the attack that they saw early.
Absolutely. I think it was a very well-matched game. From an Alexandria standpoint, this is going to be a season that Alexandria's not the team that they were that breezed through last year, started out 11-0. This is a very young team, going to kind of have to scrap their way, and I think that's what you saw tonight.
Right, exactly. And another thing that I also noticed is that the big plays for Alexandria came with their defense, and that was there late in the second half when Lincoln on this play right here goes all the way down to the 13-yard line. A couple plays later, they take it down inside the 5, and the defense holds there on 4th down. So even though, it's not the same Alexandria team, as you mentioned, not putting up 50-something points per game, but the defense is still bringing that same intensity as they have in years past. Right,
and I think Alexandria's defense has really played well throughout this year. I go back 5 years ago when Todd Ginn took the job. One of the things that he told me was he was defense, and I go back to even to his dad. A lot of people think that Larry Ginn, these teams put a lot of points. Larry Ginn was one of the best defensive coaches, and Todd knows he learned it well, and that was one of the things that he came into work on 5 years ago, and I think you saw some of that tonight.
An unseen play, well, we just saw it, but people won't mention it, was when the kids got the long run, and he just didn't step out of bounds. He got forced out of bounds because 2 kids still got that Valley Cub in them. They're not going to give up. And they didn't score then. If he takes that ball in the score, that means they score first, which gives Lincoln a lot of momentum. But he stepped out of bounds because he got forced out of bounds. And to me, one of the bigger plays of the game was them holding them on the 5-yard line on 4th down and them not scoring and then getting the ball back and then ended up scoring themselves after a turnover. But to me, that was one of the turning points in the game is Lincoln not scoring first.
Right, and it kind of, as you know, Coach, getting that momentum early in the game is very important. When Alexandria was able to do that, and then Alexandria was able to score first, and then the way Alexandria scored their first touchdown. Alexandria's not a passing team this year, but Ty Barker and TK Downey have been this close all season long, and to come back and that's the first way Alexandria scored was on a 35-yard touchdown pass.
Well, if you look at if you got to see the game film, you're going to see a lot of times he threw the ball better than what it's going to show, because you had some people had some drops tonight, which happens. The field was wet. I mean, even though it wasn't raining, the field was real slick because I wiped my hands across it and it held a lot of water. But he could have actually had more yards, throwing than he had. But there's two things you can carry when you go on the road: is you got to carry a good running game. And that's one thing they had. They didn't have a lot of penalties. And it was evident tonight because Antonio Ross had 32 carries for 178 yards. And then, like you said, DK Downey had that one catch for 45-yard touchdown. That just caught my attention. And Ty Barker was 4 of 8 for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. That's a great job of managing the game.
Yes, and again, it's a team that Antonio Ross. Let's just take Ross. He's the star of the team, and it's a team game. But Antonio Ross you coming in is not going to have the stats that he had a year ago. Coach Ginn told me it may be one of these times he may have to carry the ball 30, 35 times to pick up 120 yards,
Right.
where a year ago he might have had 250 yards. As you guys know, especially you, Coach, the quarterbacks and the running backs and all your skill players get all the press, but the game starts at the line of scrimmage. Alexandria only has one returning lineman from a year ago. If you don't have that blocking, you're not going to have all those stats. And so, Alexandria's just going to kind of be a different kind of team, just kind of a grinded-out team this year.
Well, they're a lot better when I watched them play Jacksonville up front, as far as blocking, striking, and staying on their blocks. And that's allowing them to be able to do those things. And defensively up front, they're not as big as they've been in the past. But now they go back to that more to the daddy you talked about. They're playing lower to the line of scrimmage. Some of them may even get knocked down on the ground, but they're at least plugging a hole by doing that and not letting the bigger offensive line push them around. And I thought they have improved 100% since the Jacksonville game. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. What's hard to believe is the total number of stats. Alexandria has 228 yards rushing, 60 yards passing for 288. Lincoln, this is where it goes. They did not give up the big play tonight. They gave up a lot of yards, but they didn't give up a big play. Rushing, Lincoln had 160 yards. They had 332 yards passing for a total of 492 total yards. Their quarterback, Montavious Weed, you have to give him credit, was 16 for 27 for 332 yards, and he had 77 yards rushing.
Right.
He had a night himself. He'll be a tired guy. But it came down to, even though they had a lot of yards, they bend, but they didn't break.
Right.
And to me, that is an Alexandria football team.
Yeah, that's one thing that we mentioned on our broadcast is that Lincoln outgained Alexandria by 200 yards.
Yes.
But Alexandria didn't give up the points. They let them get down there, but they didn't give up the points. And you can look at stats all day, but the final stats is whatever the scoreboard says.
That's what matters.
That's right.
Before we get back to the football talk, I want to talk about something that I noticed there. It was the interesting setup that you guys had. It wasn't a normal press box. I'll let you take a look at this monitor here. You and Jordan Smith had to set up in a truck
There we are.
at the top of the press box.
Oh, my goodness.
This has to be the most unique thing, or one of the most unique things of your career.
Well, Gerhard, I've said I've been doing this a long time, and every time I feel like I've seen it all, tonight was a first. Last year, we backed up at St. Clair County, we backed up 2 pickup trucks back to back and broadcasted from the back of 2 pickup trucks. Never done it like that. I broadcasted from the top of a gymnasium before, but just when I think I've seen it all, hey, here we go.
And Doug's in the truck.
Doug's in the back seat.
Odell's
Yeah,
in the back seat.
Wow.